Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing? Yeah, you know, this morning, everyone was full of energy. I did the whole welcome bit. There was a lot of shouting. We've had a bit of conference, had a bit of lunch, and it's all... I'm really tempted just to ask you do the whole welcome hello bit all over again. Get the energy pumping. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say instead, hello, obviously, welcome to this session. I'm going to introduce it in a second, but to get your energy levels up and to get our heads on the topic, I'd like you to turn to the person next to you. Oh, no, Don. Yes, I do it every time, and I am doing it again. Could you just say what you think the one top challenge is faced by the learning and development profession today? The top challenge faced by our profession today. What is it? Turn to a new friend and explain. Go. What ideas? What are the big challenges we have? Big challenges facing L&D. Anybody? Big challenges. Anybody? You've been talking a lot. Come on. You weren't just talking about the sandwiches. So what are the big challenges we're facing this year?
Speed of changing technology.
Technology changing. Now, is that the technology by itself, or are there implications if the technology changes that has a knock-on effect? Both, yeah. Right, so we have to deal with that and deal with how people work differently and everything else. Yeah, okay, so technology is one. Is that you scratching your head? The desire on whose part to keep up? They have it or they don't have it? They don't. They don't want to keep up with the speed of change of anything or learning technology? Learning technology in particular. Why not?
Because they're too busy doing their research and teaching is second class to that.
Right. So they'd rather do what they feel comfortable doing. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not saying yes, I agree, but I'm saying interesting point, and I do agree as it happens. Yes.
Too much focus on technology and not enough understanding of the actual needs of the colleague or the business.
Right, too much focus on going to conferences and learning about bright, shiny gadget stuff rather than what really matters. Yes.
Contingencies. What do you do if tech fails? How dependent are we just on tech to do everything?
And if it does fail, do we have a backup? I don't know. Usually we don't, actually. We don't. We discovered that last year, actually. We had a dramatic technical failure. Anyway, yes?
I think the place of change one is, given the limited budgets we have, the biggest challenge is how to spend it wisely.
Yeah.
Given the choices, options, and also the fact that you can spend the money and 2 years later you've got to spend it again.
Loads of change, loads of choice, back the wrong horse, you've wasted your money, and not only have you wasted your money, but also, and it's not just that you haven't gone forward, you've gone backwards because everything else has gone forwards. Yeah. We're really getting ourselves into a hole here, aren't we? You know, it's going too fast, we haven't got the money, we've got no backup, the guys don't want to do it, and anyway, why don't we concentrate on what we should be doing? Don't worry, it's all going to get sorted out. We've got two great speakers who are going to take us through a look at... You don't have to sit at the back, you can come forward, that's good. Who can take us through two things. We've got Clive, to begin with, who's going to take us through a look at the learning and development profession as a whole. So, the big picture. What is it that it means to be a learning and development professional? I had a chat with Clive. I just remembered as we sat here. I had a chat with Clive 6 years ago. I was 47 years old, and we were in Paul's Patisserie, or whatever it is, Paul's Boulangerie on Holborn, right? It's quite a nice shop. You get a nice cup of coffee, nice little bit of, I don't know, French patisserie. We're having a chat about it. And I said, you know what, Clive? I'm 47. I'm going to dedicate the next 20 years of my life to sorting out the learning and development professional. And I can tell you, 6 years on, I think I've done precious little to sort out the L&D profession, but perhaps we've made some small changes. Perhaps at least we're having conversations like this, which we weren't having 6 years ago. I've actually shifted my time scale. I'm now giving myself 20 years from now to sort out the L&D profession. So by the time I'm 73, I hope to have the whole thing sorted out and I can retire with some, I don't know about grace, but anyway, retire happily. Okay, so we've got Clive initially going to talk about the big picture of the profession. What does it mean to be a professional, and what are the four key, if you like, pillars that rest on? Then we've got Sundar, who's going to be talking us through, well, all right, big picture's fine. What do you actually need right now? He speaks from a position of real strength, because we were talking about this last night. He's done a great job with Pfizer in India of taking a quite disparate L&D function and really getting it skilled up in what he's calling, and Jane Hart's calling, modern workplace learning, right? So taking a real approach, a really practical approach to getting people with the practical skills they need to actually tackle some of those issues we've been talking about. I, as you can tell, can stand on stage and talk all day, but you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to the people who know what they're talking about, so I'm going to hand you over to Clive Shepherd. And what does it mean to be a professional in our industry? Clive.
Thank you very much, Don, and nice to see all of you this afternoon. And I hope that you're coming here because you also care about the learning and development profession. First of all, I'd like to ask how many of you would regard yourselves as a learning professional in some way. Would you like to put your hand up? I think it's, well, that's good. The recruitment show's actually downstairs. If you were a recruitment professional, there is another choice. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, in a way, it puts me in a slightly difficult position because here I am talking about the four responsibilities of a learning profession. It's like telling you what your job is. It sounds terribly patronizing. That's not really my intention. My intention is just to give a little bit of support to Don's mission that he started 6 years ago, which is to try and do what I can to see what we can do to uplift the status of the learning profession around the world. And why is this particular initiative, which I'm calling the four responsibilities of the learning profession, why has that come about? Well, it's come about really because I've had the very good fortune of sitting in seminars, workshops, and meetings with, I think, probably, or must be, thousands now of people like ourselves, learning professionals over the last 20 years. And they are in every sector. That's public sector, the private sector, the third sector. It's in the UK, it's in Europe, it's in the USA, it's in the Far East. And you might expect, I was talking just earlier with Sundar about this, that there would be big differences across the world and across different sectors in the sorts of difficulties and the sorts of challenges that learning professionals face. But I found almost the same universal problems everywhere. And which I think is in some ways encouraging because when you recognize a pattern, you can start to do something about what you're recognizing. But it's also a little bit scary because I think it shows that there are some general problems. Now, when I say problems, there's also, without being obvious cliche, massive opportunities. But one of the opportunities is that the people in the learning professions are almost universally really nice people to know. Do you find that too? On the whole, we are a pretty nice bunch. And we want to do our very best. We're very enthusiastic. We care about what we do in our organizations. And on the whole, we're pretty clever and imaginative about how we go about it. So the raw material is all there. One of the things that has been a real snag, which is slightly different from what some of you were identifying as the biggest challenge, for me, what I'm recognizing as the biggest challenge is that in the interactions that those learning professionals have with their key stakeholders, in particular sponsors of projects and senior managers and people like that, they are not getting the respect they deserve to behave as a proper professional. In other words, they're not being viewed in as professional a light as they need to if they're going to be able to have the biggest influence in their organizations. And this isn't an easy problem to solve, but anyway, I'm going to suggest a few things a few areas which we could begin to address. And those professional organizations around the world, like the Learning Performance Institute, the CIPD, and others, I think provide all the opportunities we need to fulfill ourselves as professionals, but we do need to be engaging as professionals with those professional bodies in a way as well. So the other little thing before I start is that there is a pile of books at the back, which goes along with this particular talk, and you're welcome to take one on the way out. 30 of them are color and 60 of them are black and white, so it's completely random whether you get a color or a black and white one, but see if you can get there first. Anyway, you're very welcome to have those. I don't have hundreds of them, so whichever ones you get, then good luck. Okay, let's try and sort of imagine a scenario, and we're going to talk through in the next few minutes 4 scenarios in a sort of day of the life of a learning professional. And let me tell you about this one. So this is your client, okay? This is George. He calls you in for a meeting. He is a long-serving senior manager who up until recently liaised with one of your colleagues who's now left the company. This guy, George, is looking for a training program to ease the organization's upcoming transition from Microsoft Office to Google Apps. Just a typical sort of IT training problem. He suggests a suite of e-learning modules to cover each of the apps with an option of classroom training for those who still prefer that particular approach. And he'd like you to work up a proposal with a budget and a schedule. Okay? This would not be your favored strategy for dealing with the problem. So what would you do? I mean, I'm not necessarily asking you to come up with a strategy now, but first of all, would you be happy just to do what George suggested? Anybody? Hand up if you would feel, no. Would anybody have some reluctance to do what George suggested? You can put your hand up.
Well, the first thing you would have to sort out is, what is his actual problem? What is it that he wants to achieve?
Absolutely. We don't know anything about it, do we? So, you know, you've come into this meeting with George. George has basically decided on what his solution will be to his problem and would like you to go away and fix it. You know, I think we should do this e-learning stuff. Why don't we have an e-learning module for each of the Google apps? That makes sense. But of course, not everybody likes e-learning, so why don't we do Classroom as well? You know, from George's point of view, that's a perfectly sensible solution. So do you think that there are any learning professionals out there who would happily go away and take that job? Yeah, I would say there are hundreds of thousands of them. And the reason why they would do that is because they don't have the confidence, first of all, to now adopt a professional negotiation or, if you like, consulting relationship with George. And George isn't coming to that meeting with the expectation that you are a professional with professional expertise. He's coming to the meeting with the expectation that you're going to build things for him and deliver them for him. Now, none of us in this room would do that, you know, but the problem is very, very widespread, particularly at the level down of the jobbing person who goes out and interfaces with the line. So let's just imagine if we applied this behavior in other aspects of our life. So let's imagine we've got a bit of cash and we say, we'll bring in a fitness trainer. And I'll tell you what, I will tell the fitness trainer what our workout should be, and then we'll let that person just shout at us. Would that be a professional relationship with the fitness trainer? Well, it wouldn't make any sense. So we could go to a doctor and we could say, look, I've checked out all my symptoms on the internet, and I looked at the various remedies which are available, and all I'd like you to do, I'm going to save you a lot of time, would you just sign for my prescription here? And would that be an acceptable relationship with a doctor? No. And we could go on, you've got a new apartment, you want to do it up, you hire an interior designer and you say, this is the color scheme, these are all the materials I want, this is where you're going to buy all the furniture. Is that an acceptable relationship? No, because you're just not getting value for money. It's like saying, well, if, I'll hire a dog and then I'll do all the barking. You know, it's sort of ridiculous. So when George says, jump, you don't say, how high? And that's the problem. Somehow or other, we've got to get the confidence to say, hang on a minute, George. You've got some good ideas there, but there's a lot of questions we need to ask before we can really even begin to think about a solution. Now, actually, this particular thing could, if you really dug into it and found out about the organization, the types of people and everything else, you'd soon discover that actually this is, actually a really simple, relatively simple change for the types of people they've got in the organization. It does require some support. It probably only needs a lot of resources rather than a lot of formal courses. And it certainly don't need lots of alternative approaches for different people. We don't know because we haven't asked those questions, but we don't want our learning professionals to go in and just be order takers. So the first responsibility that the learning professional has is to their client. Now, all of this is in the book, by the way, so let me just read out what I think is the responsibility. Well, I'm not going to read it out. Let you read it out. As a learning professional, I have a responsibility to my client. I'll just let you have a quick read of that. Can you read it at the back? Yeah. So what we're saying is that your foremost responsibility is to your client, but you're not doing the best job for your client by doing what the client wants. There's nothing intuitive about designing learning activities and experiences. If it was easy and obvious so the client could do it themselves, then why does that explain that the client would then, deliver, knowledge dumps to people, or do completely inappropriate methods, without any thought, just on the basis of the first thing that comes in their head. Typically, when people don't know about learning, they create the most awful learning experiences. And often that's, we end up having to fulfill those requirements because we were never able to, to sort that relationship out at the beginning. Okay, that's the first one. So, all right, you're on your way to lunch, having had your discussion with George, and you bump into this guy who is one of the previous learners that was on a workshop of yours several years back. So he knows you and you know them. You probably know the feeling if you do run a lot of workshops. They know you better than you know them. It's a very embarrassing experience, but you probably remember the face. Anyway, this guy, he says, can I just have your advice for a minute? Because he wants to hone his presentation skills. So he's got a big meeting coming up shortly, and he's going to be pitching for some big funds from senior management. It just happens you run presentation skills workshops. It also happens that privately you do coaching to presenters, on a sort of one-to-one basis. More pressingly, you're running very late for your lunchtime meeting, and you're in a bit of a hurry. So, bit of a difficult situation here. First of all, do you think you should spend any time with this person? Or should you just tell them, I'm far too busy, go off, and I don't even remember who you are? I mean, you would want to spend some time with them, yeah? You do have some responsibility, I think, to learners that you have worked with over the years. But if you're short of time, it'd be very tempting to say, fine, what you need is a presentation skills workshop. I run one of those. Why don't you put your name down? But would that be appropriate behavior? Yeah, for lots of reasons. First of all, there's a conflict of interest anyway, from your point of view. But also, you've done absolutely nothing to investigate what the problem is again. You're not really putting the learner's needs first. You're putting your own interests first. Either your interest because you run something which they would benefit from. And it is tempting sometimes, to fill up your own programs. Or even worse, could you take this person on as a private coachee? Could you do that? No, you couldn't. It'd be a completely unethical thing to do. For one of the employees of your organisation, for you to be, giving them private services. There's a whole load of problems here to do with your relationship with learners. This is nothing to do with clients now. And I think that this is where we can draw some parallels with what true professions are. A true profession has ethical standards. And if you're a doctor, as you know, you sign in some parts of the world anyway, you sign the Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath says basically, does anybody know? Sorry? I couldn't hear that. Do no harm, yeah. Do no harm to my patients. Now, I think that you're in a very similar position as a teacher, trainer, or facilitator, whatever, to do no harm to your learners. In other words, regardless of what your expectations are of your clients, to do something which in any way is not going to be a good experience for your learner, it's not going to meet their need, or it's going to bore them to tears, or it's going to embarrass them or humiliate them, or you're going to be selling them something which is not appropriate for them. That's not ethical behavior. And it would also be not ethical behavior to give them time and your attention. So the second responsibility, I think, is to your learners. But I do think, rather like with doctors, the responsibility to learners is more important than the responsibility is to the hospital or to the National Health Service. We are in that similar position. Yes, we go to work in order to meet the requirements of the clients in our organization. But in doing that work, we must not do harm to learners. And some of the things that we're asked to do harm to learners. And we sort of feel like we're squeezed into doing that. And I think so. One of the sort of second planks, if you like, of being a professional is having ethical standards which don't allow you, for example, to throw information to people in a 6-hour e-learning program or something like that. That is just unacceptable. It's doing harm to learners. We shouldn't be doing that. Or, getting them to do some sort of role play which they would feel really uncomfortable about doing in front of loads of other people on video. I mean, it's fine for some people. In some cases, that is a horrifying experience for a learner. We should not be able to do that. I think we have a responsibility to do no harm to learners while we're also meeting our clients' needs. Okay, so the second thing is a responsibility to our learners. I'll just let you read that. Now, one of the things at the bottom, which is always the bit where I run for cover, is the bit about untested remedies. It's a bit like saying that you're selling quack medicine. There is obviously science, and there's pseudoscience. And there's no doubt that the learning profession has its fair share of pseudoscience. And often, which is taught to us as if it is science, whether you go to teacher training college or train the trainer courses, we are often persuaded to adopt various models and theories which we assume must be correct because we're being taught them in a formal environment. But if you can imagine that you would not be comfortable probably going to a doctor and being offered a herbal medicine, I mean, you may believe in it, but you wouldn't expect your doctor to give it to you. And you wouldn't expect an astronomer on the television to be guided in what they do by the stars, what they read in the stars in the newspaper. You wouldn't expect, a learning professional to be pushing out to learners theories and models which haven't been properly scientifically tested. And there is a whole load of evidence about what is true about learning, but it isn't necessarily what's in the heads of most learning professionals, even if you've been formally trained as a teacher. In fact, especially if you've been formally trained as a teacher. If I was to list the things that would be on my banned list, I probably wouldn't be able to leave the building, would I, Dom? People would be throwing stuff at me.
You wouldn't have time.
But there's a little list in the book. I make no apologies. Third thing, I'm sorry if we're moving a little bit slowly. Third thing, we get to lunch, and we're having a conversation with somebody who's just joined the organization. Okay, they've been studying the psychology of learning at college. They're very keen. They've been given the task of redesigning the induction program. First of all, she says, though, that she saw you talking in the corridor with somebody. What was all that about? She wants to know what the discussion was with the previous student of yours in the corridor. Can you tell her? No, you can't. This is a confidential relationship between you and a learner. This is not something you can share. She then goes on to talk about her own induction program that she went through, and she's redesigning the induction program. Her own induction program she thought was absolutely shocking. She said the trainer seemed to have absolutely no idea about how people learn. She wonders what you think about the person's work. Is it okay for you to agree with her, to discuss that in that way, in the way it's been positioned? I don't think it is. It's not acceptable for us to be putting down the work of other learning professionals, in any way at all. Anyway, she goes on to ask you lots of things about, her program, and she wants your support, and she wants to test out ideas with you. Is it a responsibility of yours to help somebody who's coming new into the organization, who's joining the learning profession? I think there is a responsibility. And that, in time, that person as well will become a teacher as well as a learner. So you've got a responsibility to your peers as well as to your clients and your learners. And there's a lot this person can teach you as well. It can work both ways. So third thing is you're having a responsibility to your peers. And I'll let you just have a quick read through that. So one of the problems with if one person in the room here goes to see George and says to George, fine, we're going to make the e-learning programs, that makes it harder for every other one in the room. Do you get what I mean? Every time somebody lets the side down by behaving like an order taker, it makes it harder for us to behave as trusted consultants. That's a professional responsibility to the people in the room, or the people in our profession. So if we all behave in a very professional way, we make it much easier for the people that follow. So this person we've just seen, just joining the profession, she wants to be able to go into a meeting with her client in the organization and be treated with a great deal of respect in the same way as if she was an architect, a lawyer, or a dentist, or whatever else it might be. And I think that we have a responsibility not only to uphold the values of the profession and the professional credibility, but to help everybody else to do the same. That means supporting other people. That means engaging in the communities of practice and professional bodies that we're involved in, engaging in a very positive way, not just taking from them, or we start off by taking from them, but by putting stuff back in, helping other people to develop. So let's move on to the last one. This is your manager. And your manager is basically a new broom, and what she's trying to, she has ambitious plans for the department. She's going to modernize many aspects of what the department does. She understands that you are not making a lot of use of technology in what you do, and in fact you don't seem to have any interest in technology, and she wants you to engage in some development activities to, to do something about that, which is the problem that you were talking about earlier. It's not an unusual situation. Should you go along with that? Should you do what you need to do to get yourself up to date with new technology? Is that your responsibility? Well, I think it is. This idea that a professional can be technophobic, I find, frankly, completely ridiculous. If you think about any other profession, can you imagine an architect who doesn't keep up to date with building materials, electrical systems, lighting systems, all the new methods of manufacture and different styles and techniques? Can you imagine that? It would, how long would you last in that profession? Or a dentist who doesn't have the latest equipment or doesn't know how to use it, gets their dental nurse to do it for them. Can you imagine how credible would that person be to you? It would be, you'd think it was completely ridiculous. It is equally completely ridiculous that a teacher or a trainer does not know how to use the technology which is, the current tools of their trade. It is completely ridiculous, and it is not acceptable to be one of the people who doesn't keep up to date while other people do. All of us have to be up to date, so that we have a final obligation, which is to ourselves, to make sure that we are as completely up to date as necessary. That isn't just technology, because technology is I don't think technology is only a means to an end. I know it's a cliche, but it is only a means to an end. What you do with technology is far more important, and what you do with technology is timeless. So coming back to those evidence-based techniques of teaching and training, really understanding what works in terms of adult learning, that's equally as important as learning about technology. But both of them are absolutely the pillars of your profession. And if you don't take that seriously, then, and we don't spend enough time or money doing this, then we're only going to get what we've always got. So those were the four. I'll just let you quickly read that fourth one. So those are the four responsibilities. It's the responsibility to your client, which is obviously why you go to work, in the sense that that's what you're being paid for. Clearly, you've got to meet the needs of your client while not doing harm to learners, while upholding the standards of your profession with your peers, and while doing everything you can to advance your own understanding, which obviously everybody in this room is doing that. That's why you're here. That's why you come to a show like this. So somehow or other, I believe that it's possible. We can do something to uplift the sort of general credibility of the profession if we understand what our responsibilities are, and if we all go back and we look at the people that work for us and with us, and we try and encourage everybody to collectively get ourselves on the same starting point as the corporate lawyers and accountants and all the other professionals that whose views are taken very seriously in an organization. But they won't be as long as we are order takers. We can't, there's nothing wrong with being a builder, but that's not the job we've got. Our job is to be the architect, and that is that's a big shift in positioning. So anyway, I'm hoping that you'll find that interesting and that you'll be able to give your support to that little venture. Thanks, Don. Sorry if it wasn't 10 minutes.